Greetings, friends. My name is David McLeod. I'm your life mastery coach. Welcome to MagnifEssence in Motion. Today, we're doing episode number 12, and it's called The Lost Art of Selfhood. Now, before I go into the discussion about this topic, I would like to just invite you to learn a little bit about my website, which is MagnifEssence.com. I encourage you to go check it out. It's a website where I've got lots of content. It's a membership site. You can sign up for a free membership, and then there's a number of levels of paid membership, and each level offers different streams of content, access to different courses that are available that you can get at different discounts. And plus, if you sign up as a platinum member, you get access to my proprietary online journaling program, which is a site-wide journaling system that allows you to keep notes on your own progress on pretty much every page that you visit. So I encourage you to go check that out. Again, it's MagnifEssence.com, and I hope you'll maybe sign up for a membership. I'd love to have you on board. Again, my name is David McLeod. I'm your life mastery coach. Today, we're talking about the lost art of selfhood. Now, have you ever felt like you're running on empty, constantly giving to others while your own cup stays bone dry? Maybe you struggle with self-doubt, second-guessing your choices, or feeling like an imposter in your own life. If so, I can guarantee you are not alone. There's lots of people who experience that kind of feeling. So many of our mental and emotional challenges, whether low self-esteem, shaky boundaries, or the nagging sense that you don't really know who you are, boil down to one thing: your relationship with yourself. Not the ego-driven, look at me version, but your true spiritual essence, the core of who you are, beyond roles, expectations, and other people's opinions. So this episode of MagnifEssence in Motion is all about reclaiming that connection and learning how self-reliance isn't selfish, it's survival. So I have invited my good friend and colleague, emotional pro Ilene Dillon, to join me today. Now, Ilene has like 50 years of experience in therapy, in psychotherapy, in licensed clinical and family stuff. I mean, she is an amazing and wise woman. So please join me in welcoming Ilene Dillon to this program.
Marriage stuff, huh? That's cool.
I can't remember
Hi,
your
David.
proper title. I know you're a social worker. I know you're a psychotherapist, and I know lots of things. And it's all amazing to me. But welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. You are correct. I have two licenses, which is confusing and unusual. I have a clinical social work license and a marriage and family counseling license.
Right.
So that's where the confusion goes.
Yeah, and I know, and getting certifications and licenses for different things like that, it's a lot of work, a lot of time and energy invested, a lot of money too, I'm sure. But you've done it because of your love of helping people and learning about yourself. Isn't that right? I mean, that's what you've told me. So, yeah. So say a little bit about this idea of the importance of empowering our true self. I know this is an issue that's come up for you in the recent past. Tell me a little bit about what's brought it up and a little bit about your journey, about how you got here.
Well, are you writing for the volume 6 of the Wellness Universe book, David?
Well, I only contributed one of the small things in chapter 25.
Oh, okay. Well, so the chapter that I wrote for the Wellness Universe Guide for Complete Self-Care, Volume 6, is all about Humpty Dumpty. And Humpty Dumpty has to do with the fact that we fragment ourselves. We all come to the earth intact. Our spiritual self comes here. Our self is full of love. And depending on what we run into, how we treat ourselves, how supported we are, that self can fragment and fragment and fragment. And I was thinking, you brought up some of these, but we are currently accepting that our country is in a mental health crisis, and I started thinking about how self is involved in mental health. Self-worth, self-esteem, self-trust, self-safety, self-responsibility, filling our needs and wants, and the rights we have for health care, support, and love. In other words, self is really a basis for our well-being. And I was thinking, looking at it, as I told you right before we got on the show, I've been really thinking about this more than I usually do. And I had this idea to not accept that we have a self and care for that self is kind of like coming to the world to be a turtle and immediately taking our shell off, because our self is our home and we need it to take care of ourselves. And there's one other factor that I've noticed as I've been looking at things, and feel free to disagree with this, David, if you don't agree. And that is
Oh,
that
you
it
know me
seems
well enough by now, Eileen.
I don't even have to invite you, huh? Okay.
But
Um, so I find, like, let me just say, this week, I was visiting family, and somebody told me of taking a loved one, a young person, to a medical clinic after a suicide attempt during COVID, and how full that unit was with young girls who were absolutely not consolable. They were hysterical. They had, and as I listened to it, they had no sense of self. So when it came time to have the world behave or available in a different way, they had nothing to hold on to. And the self is it's our home. It's something for us to hold on to. And how did I get involved in all of this? I started losing myself very early on, like by age 6 months. And then to survive, I developed a self who could cook my own scrambled eggs on a gas stove when I was 2 years old, and taught myself to read when I was 4.5, so I could keep up with my sister, who was the person to whom I had attached for my survival. And so I had both self taken away and self that I created. And that self often got in the way of relating to other people because I couldn't receive. I was so busy taking care of myself because I didn't expect anybody else to do it from a very young age, that had no room for anybody else to come in and take care of me. And that's where I started getting interested in self, when I realized my self and lack of self is what was getting in my way to live the life that I wanted to live. And I see that young people, there's a big emphasis now on community as opposed to self, and I think it leaves an empty place, so that young people, that's where a young person needs to strengthen themselves, is also to get to know who they are rather than first considering other people.
right.
All right.
This is a fascinating conversation. First of all, I think a big challenge has to do with our language and the words that we use. I mean, you talk about losing yourself and then creating a new self. I mean, to me, what you're really describing is taking off one costume and putting on another. And that, to me, is not the self at all. The self is the essence of who I really am that's underneath all of this. Part of the problem that we have in our world, and I've seen this everywhere, and I see it with all my clients, actually, and I certainly saw it first with myself, is when I ask the question, who are you? People often start by saying, well, I'm David, or I'm Eileen, or I'm Joe, or I'm Bob. And I will say, well, thank you. And who are you? And I think instantly they get the sense, oh, right, I'm not just my name. What else am I? Well, then they might say, I'm a man or I'm a woman. And then I'll say, thank you. And who are you? And they'll say, oh, I may be a teacher or a psychotherapist or a coach or an author or a poet or a musician or whatever. And I'm thinking, thank you. And who are you? And I keep doing this. And what happens is all of those costumes, masks, layers start to fall away, and people start to go deeper and deeper and deeper into the true essence. And they begin to realize, wow, all of these labels I've used to describe myself, they're not really who I am. They are simply qualities or characteristics or attributes that I have somehow expressed as a result of who I am. And so who is that thing that I am that is expressing all these things? That's the question that I want people to learn and really dive into. Because, I think one of the ways I describe this is each one of those little attributes, qualities, whatever, could be considered a self with all lowercase letters, SELF. And they're all based on ego mind principles. But when you get deeper and deeper and deeper, you start to connect to the self, all capital letters. And that self, in my view, is what I call a spiritually empowered life force. It's a backronym. I made it up. So that's how I see it. And so the idea of selfhood means, in my view, getting back connected to that true essence of who I really am, and letting
Yes.
that be the driver, the captain of my ship, the keeper of the vision for my life, the guide that keeps me moving in the right direction.
Yes, but it took me about 50 or 60 years to be able to find that person. When you get fragmented or you lose, or what I learned to call uh, survival contracts. Uh, for example, if I'm a loud child and I have parents who can't stand loud children, I'll give that part of myself up. That's a survival contract, so that my parents will love me enough that I can grow up.
Right.
And so when we have early trauma or not connecting with the self, it takes a long time to even, or at least it took me a long time, and I've seen it with clients as well, to even recognize that I had a self. And I think that's where things like imposter syndrome come in. I so much don't know who I am that I think, especially I notice it with when I really am interested to do something, I start to go do it and I go, oh, maybe I'm an imposter. And the reality is, when I'm internally motivated to do something, that's not imposter at all. That's exactly the opposite. That's us listening to our heart. And
Right. Mm-hmm.
so it took me decades to just even have a sense of me being. I remember it was 1987, which was a while back, but that was when I learned to set boundaries for myself. I decided I was on a trip with a friend, and I decided to take an hour to myself every day, and discovered that boundaries for me were like pulling love up from the center of the earth. And
Nice.
it slowly developed over the years for me finally understanding. Here's where, um, not occupying, not staying connected to the soul, where it goes awry is, and it just went out of my head. It goes awry when we. Okay, let's do this. I don't have very many of these moments. Uh, so we're living from the outside in, and when I'm thinking of my community, I think first of my community and then me. And what I've come to say it this way: we are designed to live from the inside out instead of from the outside in, which means first I get my own house in order. First, I make sure my turtle shell is in good shape, and then I can do something out there. And that I've only been doing for about 10 or 12 years.
Right.
Uh,
Mhm.
and and I've really been focusing on loving myself. And when I first started, I couldn't hold a feeling of love for myself longer than about 5 seconds. But I kept
Wow.
working at it and working at it. And now it's coming naturally, and I'm getting the benefits. Oh my gosh, I used to cry myself to sleep because I had no friends when I was in my 30s. Here I am 50 years later, and people are, can I help you? I really enjoy you. You're so inspired. I mean, I can't begin to tell you the difference where people are seeing something in me. And what I understand that to be is I now have reconnected with that deep spiritual self, which is love. And that love I then have extra to give away, but also outside of me reflects it back to me. So it's a whole different life when myself is love, and I love myself first before I give that away.
Right. Absolutely. Such great wisdom and great learnings. Obviously, you've gone through a lot of experience. And one thing I'll say is, yeah, it took me a long time too. It took me a very long time, actually, about 50 years, really. You know, the first 50 years of my life, well, the first 40 were just a process of disowning myself. And I didn't even know I was doing that. It was completely unconscious. It was not,
Right.
I was abiding by what I thought the society wanted of me. You know, they I was supposed to behave this certain way. I was supposed to do these certain things. I was supposed to build this kind of family and have these kinds of possessions and this kind of degree and this and that and the other. I was supposed to do all those things in order to achieve happiness and success. Well, after 40 years of doing all that, where was the happiness and success? It wasn't there. In fact, I felt the exact opposite, you know? And that's when I realized something about this formula isn't right. Something's not working. Now, maybe it works for some people, but it certainly didn't work for me. And it sounds like it didn't work for you either. And the problem is, we still go around trying to tell our kids that we know them better than they know themselves. We're still doing that. And
Yes.
it's absolutely wrong, you know? So it's no surprise to me that it does take a long time, because we have to go through that first process of trying to go along to get along kind of thing, only to discover that it doesn't work. And then sooner or later, we're going to go through what has now become euphemistically known as a midlife crisis in order to be able to reconnect to the truth of who we really are. And that's when the challenge starts.
Well, that also, I agree with you. And that also ricochets off of those special contracts we made, survival contracts. Um, I went through midlife crisis at about the age of 30, and I had a therapist who understood the process. She had a three-stage process. There was innocence, uh, cynicism, and innocence with wisdom were the three stages that she offered. Innocence is like when you're a kid or a young person like you, those first 40 years. I'm doing everything I'm told to do. I'm keeping my contracts. I'm, putting my effort in. I'm being a good person, the whole thing. And then something happens, like COVID was one of those things. Or you could lose a job, or you could have a divorce, or anything, some event occurs where your system gets a hole blown in it. And then and then we try to get things to stabilize again, but it doesn't work when this process starts. Nothing works. Instead, everything starts falling apart. And usually, when people come into my office, having started this process, they come in saying, "I'm losing my mind. I can't. I think I'm crazy." And really, I euphemistically call this an emotional menstrual period, because what's actually happening is all these things that we've picked up that get in the way of our connection with ourselves are being sloughed off. And we get terrified. People want to take drugs so they don't have to feel it. And I have encouraged people over the years not to take drugs, just go through it, because the biggest thing a therapist has to tell a person is there is an end to this. Two things: you are not crazy, and there is an end to this. I know, I know, because there was an end for me, and I've now helped really hundreds of people go through this process, and I've
Right.
never had anybody not go all the way through it. And so then the second phase is cynicism. There's no point in doing anything. I think I want to connect with people, but I don't have anything to say to them. This is never going to work out. What's wrong with me? That's the period of cynicism. And then there's this little quiet period of time where once you get all that cynicism out of you, the whole process can take 6 months to a year, by the way. And then there's a quiet, and then we start building back to bringing our self, our true self, in. We start living our life on the basis of who we are, not on the basis of what we've taken in from the outside. And
Right.
the fun part about that is nobody can ever take that away from us. And that's when
Right.
I started to recognize that I had a self.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a fascinating process for sure. And one thing that I have kind of fantasized about doing is helping young people figure this out much earlier in life. And I've discovered that most of the young people I've tried to talk to, they say, "Well, I'm sorry, I got to do it my own way. I got to do it my own way." Okay, you're right. You got to do it your own way. But I'm here when you're ready for some support. you know, and
Mhm.
it's funny. There's a wall over there, and I have to smash into it a few times. That's kind of what I have to do. I have to beat my head
Do,
against that wall until either the wall breaks or I break. One of those
do
two
you know
things has.
why? Can I tell you why we do that? Because people hate to change. They would rather hold on to something that is very painful uh, forever if they can, than make a change. And as a therapist, my learning is that most people, every time we don't learn something, we don't progress like you're offering people to do, every time it comes around again, it gets to be a more painful issue, more painful.
Right,
We
right.
build it up,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And so literally, not until the pain of where I am seems to me it's not going to be any worse if I go to the new place, will I turn loose and take that leap
Exactly.
of faith.
I think, yeah, I don't think that people are afraid of change or that they really hate change all that much. I mean, we all do it when we have to. I think it's more accurate to say that um, we have comfort zones, and we like to stay in our comfort zones. And anything that upsets that comfort zone feels painful, and that's something we want to avoid. So when a suggestion for a massive change comes along, if the pain level is not enough to justify making that change, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stay comfortable in my comfort zone. Yeah. I think we're saying the same thing, is that I just don't see it as people are afraid of change, because they'll certainly make the change when it becomes necessary, you know?
Well, I just worked with a lot of people who resist, resist, resist.
Yeah.
And one of
Well,
my big
resistance is not the
messages,
same as being afraid of something. I mean, it might be, but you
yes,
do resist for different reasons.
but there are different reasons. Yeah. So now I was again here. I don't, I
What?
just
I'm
went
sorry,
on
what
a,
happened?
I went on a little vacation recently and
Okay.
I'm not all the way back. Um, the, so yes, well, yes, there are lots of different reasons we resist, but the other thing is, that I talk about all the time is that we don't understand that the earth is all about change and growth. We don't accept
Everything
that
about life is changing. Yep.
that we're in a big giant school, and so we don't have in our mind, and that's one of my big messages to people, we don't have in our mind when something hits you don't understand or that's painful or brings an emotion, that's an opportunity for you to learn something. So stop and look at it and use yourself to grow. Look at yourself, and the whole issue resolves, and the emotion, if it's a painful emotion like anger or hurt, it dissipates and falls away when you learn the lesson. So I think that's another reason people resist, is
Sure.
they don't
Yeah,
know, hey, this is a learning opportunity, get with it.
that's right. Well, and resistance is the opposite of acceptance, isn't it? You know,
Yes.
and
Uh-huh.
the part of the problem with acceptance, part of the reason that people are they're not inclined to be really super accepting is there's an unconscious idea that, well, if I accept something, that means I agree with it. That means that I condone it. That means that I think it's okay. Well, that's not what you're saying when you accept something as it is. You're simply saying it is what it is. Once you accept it and it becomes what it really is in your awareness, then you empower yourself to actually decide how you want to deal with it. Until you accept it, you're going to be constantly in this, this constant fight. Reality is there, and you are trying to change reality. Can you change reality? Not really, but you can change yourself. You can change how you react and how you respond to reality. You can decide that. So, but the first thing you have to do is accept this is reality. This is what it is. I don't have to like it. I don't have to dislike it. I just simply have to accept it as it is. Once I've done that, now I can begin to decide what's the right way for me to interact with this thing that's here. What's going to be the best way for me to grow and expand in the context of this
Right.
thing that has now shown up in my life.
Right. Many, many years ago, I attended a lecture in San Francisco by an Indian yogi named Kaushik, with a K at the end. And it was on what he called facing fact. And he told, which is what you're talking about there. Facing fact, he said, is the pathway to freedom. Because what happens is, if something happens in my life, for example, I may, for the first 5 times, not want to look at it, or it's too painful, or I don't notice it. And otherwise, I may go, I don't know what to do about this, or I will go to somebody else and ask them. And as Esther Hicks said, all you learn there is how they would do it for themselves. May have nothing to do with you. Uh, but what we really need to do is look at it, and this is using ourself. Is this true? Is it true objectively? Is it true for me? Is it a fact? If it is, then fighting it or trying to ignore it is ridiculous, because it's a fact. It's not going to go away. Whereas when you face it, then you can deal with it, and it, again, the energy of it fades away and you can go on. So I learned that, I don't know, uh, close to 50 years ago now. And I had no idea that just by looking at something squarely for what it really was, instead of in some way obscuring it. And last night I was telling you right before the show, my son put a program on YouTube by about Carl Jung, and I wrote this quote down: "What we repress becomes what controls us. What we don't pay attention to, what facts we don't look at, that's what begins to control us." I
Absolutely.
really,
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
And repression, of course, is a completely unconscious uh, behavior. It's not like suppression. Suppression implies a certain degree of conscious awareness. I am suppressing this consciously. Repression
Right.
happens behind the scenes. It's an unconscious action. You don't even necessarily know you're doing it. So it requires deep introspection to look at, if you're having the side effects of that, something is controlling you from the outside. Now you can do some deep introspection, what I like to call soul spelunking, where you take your internal flashlight and you start looking around inside in these dark places, and you say, okay, what's really going on? What are the messages from all these places in my body, in my mind, in my soul? What are the messages that I'm not listening to? And you give yourself the permission to just listen without judgment and to just be present to it. Remember, this is part of that acceptance process. This is what is. You may not like it. You may disagree with it. You may have aspects of yourself that, man, I really don't like that part of me. And I just don't want to ever show it. Well, there's a reason that part is there. It's a part of who you are. And it's got some great gifts that you might be able to benefit from if you just give that part an opportunity and a chance to express itself and to explain what it's there for. And this requires a conscious effort, you know?
Mm-hmm. I actually think it is easier to find things. I think your system that you just described is really good. And yet, one of the shortcuts, I've been studying emotions for many years. I'm known as the emotional pro, um, because whenever we have an experience, emotions come with it. And
Absolutely.
the simplest one, emotions are designed. We don't know what emotions are. Emotions are energy, and they're messengers. They're designed to tell us what we need to know in order to decode the lesson of the experience. And just a simple explanation or example. We think that when we feel lonely, it's because we don't have enough contact with other people. But if you go back to emotions are energy, you have a different definition. Loneliness is about having more energy going out than coming in, or translated, not loving ourselves enough. And all we have to do, if I have an experience of loneliness, I can then say, what is this experience attempting to teach me? Or what is it showing me that I believe? What would I have to believe to have this? Like, have had an issue all my life with abandonment, right? And so I might still, every once in a while, have a feeling of, oh my gosh, I feel terrible. I've been interacting and that person isn't here anymore. And it's an abandonment. What is that abandonment trying to show me? It's trying to help me see that I have still have belief that I can be abandoned. But when I have the self that we've been talking about, that deep spiritual uh, entity or self, the person or the essence we were when we came to Earth, uh, there's nothing wrong with me. When we say I'm an imposter, you can't be an imposter. If you're living your life, you can't even be an imposter. You are who you are at that time. You may not like it, as you pointed out, and you may want to be different, and that's okay. That's moving you to do some growing, but you really can't be an imposter. You can.
Right.
A little kid doesn't think about being an imposter. A little kid thinks about being curious and trying things out. And
Right.
if you shift over, oh, what do you think will happen if I speak to this person? What do you think will happen if I eat this food? Be curious and try it out. And yourself will take you right where you need to go. And usually, when you're taking care of yourself, by the way, when you're truly choosing behaviors and things to do because it's going to make you feel better, because you're aware that it's going to make you feel better, it actually is a benefit to the people around you as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, curiosity, I think, is a spiritual superpower. It's one of those things that it helps to guide you in a direction. And why are you curious? Well, it's because there's an aspect of yourself that is connected to that, whatever that thing is that you're trying to find out about. There's an aspect of you that's attached to that thing spiritually, energetically. And that's why you're drawn to find out more about it. So take advantage of whenever you feel that sense of curiosity arising, perk up and say, oh, I wonder what that's about. Let's go find out. And pretend, go back to that, your childhood, and how much fun it was to have an adventure, going around a corner and having no idea what was around the corner, and only to discover some amazing little adventure around the corner. So yeah, curiosity is, in my view, tightly coupled with intuition. I think they are the same energy, just with one is more interrogative and the other one is more directive, but they both come from the same place. And while I'm on this topic of spiritual essence and who we really are, one thing that I have learned in my work, when I am connected to my deep spiritual true essence of who I really am, there is no loneliness. There's nothing like that exists, because all I have is connection to all that is, everything. There is nothing I'm not connected to, right? So it's not possible to be lonely. Lonely is only an experience of the ego mind. And the ego mind is all about separation, right? Separation, uniqueness, individuality, all that logical stuff, everything. The ego mind believes that everything is separate, and believes that when this body dies, that's it. The ego is dead. It's gone. But my spiritual essence, that is completely the opposite. And for the same reason, when you are connected deeply to your true spiritual essence, you'll also become aware of the fact that since you are all that is, since you are connected to all that is, the notion of boundary makes no sense in that context. Boundaries are useless in the spiritual realm because everything is connected. There's no way to divide them. However, boundaries are useful in the physical world because they help us to grow in a way that is safe, right? I talked about the comfort zone. Well, what is the comfort zone but my ultimate boundary, right? What happens is if I give myself permission from my ego state to step outside that comfort zone, I discover that maybe it's not so bad after all. And what happens is, by stepping outside that comfort zone, I've effectively increased the radius of my comfort zone. And so consequently, I'm expanding my boundaries.
Yes. I have 2 points here that I'd like to make. One is that, and it has to do with being selfish or self-oriented or trapped in your ego. They both do. And that is the way things are set up. Souls or energy or whoever the hell we are when we first get to the earth, come to the earth, and we spend, especially the first 9 or 10 years of life, self-oriented. I'm a 1-year-old, I'm studying my hand. I'm 2, I'm angry with you because you're not behaving the way I need you to, etc., etc. And so the boundaries that you were talking about there, David, I think we have to first occupy our bodies and our self and be aware of that before we can open to the larger picture that you were talking about. And life is set
Right.
up that way also. The other aspect is people often feel very like there's something wrong with them when they focus on themselves, or they ask for what they want, or they do what is in their heart to do. They feel embarrassed by it, or like they're doing something wrong. And we tend to judge ourselves as being selfish. Well, I have done a lot of therapy with people. A number of people have been nurses who worked for surgeons. And they told me 2 practically to a person, that surgeons are incredibly egotistical. What do you know? I meet a surgeon and eventually marry him. So I met my husband, Bob, who is a neurosurgeon. And when I was dating him, I was in my 50s. When I was dating him, I thought, I was curious, I better check this out and ask him. So I asked him, do you consider that you have an ego, a big ego? And he thought about it for a minute and he said, well, yes, I do have an ego. And he said, and my ego is very important to me. And it would be very important to you if you were my patient on the table, because my ego allows me to make a decision about doing something and operating on you. And I don't, in the middle of it, stop and turn to David and go, what do you think? Am I doing the right thing? Am I being an imposter here? No, you don't want me to do that when I'm being a surgeon. And it makes it really clear. Why do we do it under any other circumstances? Why not follow our curiosity all the way through? If it doesn't turn out, we can do something different. And if it does, we've learned something and we've moved forward.
Yeah, fascinating for sure. Um, but I think that it is not a requirement to have a big ego to be a successful surgeon, as far as I'm concerned. I would think that you can still be spiritually connected and have a strong belief in a higher power and be truly connected to your true self and still simultaneously be an excellent surgeon. I do believe that's possible. So,
Of course.
yeah, I
But
mean,
I
I
thought his
think,
point was well taken.
right. I mean, it's like saying all billionaires are egotistical. Well, I will have to say that so far, I haven't seen too many examples of billionaires who strike me as truly spiritual. But that doesn't mean there aren't some. It's just obviously we are exposed to certain things within our media and so forth, and I'm sure that there are plenty of very, very spiritual people who also happen to be wealthy. They don't get talked about as much because they're not out there trying to gather accolades and so forth for themselves the way an egotistical person would.
But also, I misunderstood what he was about. In the first 3 months that we were married, he he spent time doing what he wanted to do. He didn't want to be disturbed. He, you know, I after about 3 months, I'm going, did I make a mistake? This man seems to be so self-oriented. I can hardly stand it. And then as I was looking at it, I realized that he actually was behaving the same way he was when I was dating him. He had not changed. And I began to look at it, and it seemed to me like he had he had an orbit of his own energy, his self, if you will, that he operated on. And that self had been much more supported than mine in his growing up. His mother had supported. He was really smart, and she supported him in his activities and all the way through. So he had this central core of energy that was his energy, his self, if you will, or a part of his self, and that's what he operated around. And so once I saw that, I said, well, what is it that I need to be learning from this situation in that case? And guess what I discovered? I did not have a self like that. I didn't have an energy core like he did. And I then was faced with the choice, either get upset about the fact that he had that energy core, or why not develop one for myself? And that's what I decided to do. And it made us more equal. And I no longer had difficulty with that issue. So very often we can think it's somebody else who's causing us distress when in fact by them being who the self that they are, we get to see more about the self that we are or can be.
Right. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. I just want to say to the folks who are here at the live show, thank you for being here. I'm sorry, I should have said this before, but if you are here, you have some questions or comments or something, please feel free to post them in the chat, and we'll do our best to respond to those. Yeah, I think this whole idea of connecting to ourself, and I think one of the things that you said triggered this idea in my mind that sometimes I remember in my own life, I've had this happen. I tend to kind of shrink back when I'm in the presence of someone who is strongly connected to his or herself. And that only happened because I didn't have a lot of self-confidence. You know, I had fake self-confidence, you know, the ego bravado that I would sometimes engage. But that has shifted over the years. Now that I've become more grounded and more aware and more connected to my true self, it's easier for me to stand fully in that part and not worry about what other people think of me. Or, you know, I mean, it's not that I don't care what people think of me. It's just that I don't let what they think of me affect me to the point where I'm going to change who I am. You know, I might use
Yes.
feedback as a mechanism to say, okay, I understand that particular behavior is troublesome for you. Let me meditate on it, and I'll make a decision about whether I want to change it or not. You know, but there's a whole difference in the way life unfolds now. I have no need to be with any particular kind of people. I don't feel alone any of the time, even though I am physically, you know, kind of living by myself and I have just my dog here. I don't feel
Me
alone.
too.
I don't have those kinds of issues. Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite activities nowadays is meditating, you know,
Hmm.
and meditating is all about communing with the self.
Yes. Yeah. And so really, it's like coming home. We come here to the earth, and all the things that happen can shatter or scatter or question who we are. And part of what I think we might be both wanting to tell other people is, okay, that happened. Whatever it was, not a big deal. It's there so that you can get stronger and learn and get on it and do it as fast as possible. You'll have a better life. You'll enjoy your life. You'll be stronger. You'll be more uh, giving, more loving, more effective in the world, more successful, whatever it is that you want, because you will be your deep self, and your deep self came here to have a life, and you're going to have a life that you like better.
Yeah, absolutely. And a big part of that, as you get more connected to that deep essence of who you really are, and it just grows in intensity. It comes to a point where prioritizing yourself is not about being selfish at all. It's just about taking good care of this beautiful, magnificent essence that is within you, taking good care and loving it so that you can bring it forth and share it with other people. And when you bring it forth and share it with other people, what you are doing is sharing your love, sharing the essence of who you are from a full cup rather than an empty cup. It makes a
Hmm.
huge difference. And other people feel this. They know the difference. It also means that you can stand up and just be genuine and real and authentic, because you no longer care whether people like you or not. It's up to them,
But the
If someone
irony
likes
is when
me,
you
yeah.
yeah, but the
If someone
irony is
likes
when
me,
you do
that's
that.
up to him. If someone dislikes me, that's also up to him or her. It's an opportunity
Right.
for that person to reflect upon what's going on inside himself or
Right.
herself that might be really the issue and have nothing to do with me at all.
But the irony is, at least this is what I've experienced. This is what I've experienced is that the more I am myself, the more I take responsibility for myself, the more other people actually do like me. Not
Yeah.
everybody's going to like me. Uh, I mean, that's true for all of us, but I'm I'm more likable, and I wasn't for many years when I didn't have a clear when I was more disconnected from myself.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, when you like yourself, it's easier for other people to like you. It's
Yeah,
really that's how it comes across, right? And this whole
yeah.
thing is, yeah, it's. I'm sorry, you were going to say something else?
Well, I want to just tie this in with modern day stress and anxiety because what you've been describing about how you live and what I have learned, where we are being ourselves and we have connected more, much more, and healed self fragments that got messed up, and we're
Right.
being ourselves more. Uh, Life is so much calmer. I don't I sleep well. I don't have anxiety. I don't worry. There's no point in it anymore.
Exactly.
Because it's just no point.
Yeah.
Somebody once said to me, I think I was in a grocery store and somebody said, are you having a good day?" And I said, "Actually, every day is good. And if it isn't, there's no point in living it."
Yeah. And even if even if you can't come out and say every day is a good day, it's still a good day because there's something to be gained from whatever experience is happening in the moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Uh, and of course, it's really only the ego mind that makes a judgment about whether it's a good day or a bad day anyway, you know?
Yep.
And here's something that I will say to people, no matter how deeply connected you get to yourself, I really don't think you're ever going to get rid of your ego. You know, you're going to have an ego as long as you remain on this physical plane, you know, and remain healthy and so forth. Uh, it, the idea of suppressing or killing or removing or eliminating the ego, I think, is a dangerous way to think. The ego is a powerful tool. It's kind of like a sledgehammer, you know? A sledgehammer is a very useful and powerful tool under certain circumstances. But it's possible to use that sledgehammer in ways that can cause a lot of damage. So if you connect to yourself, your true essence, your true nature, what'll happen, I can't guarantee this, but this is what happened for me. You tend to find that you stay connected to yourself. Yourself becomes the guiding force in your life, and the ego then just simply becomes a co-pilot. You know, someone who helps you move around the physical plane. It's a beautiful relationship when you can get both of them working in synchrony with each other.
And one way that I have learned to work with ego is to exercise humility. A
Hmm.
long time ago, I was a member of a church, and the leader of the church turned to me one day and said, "You need to meditate on humility. You need to know what humility is for yourself." So I went home and meditated for quite a while on humility. And the definition that I came up with through that process was that humility is the constant recognition that there's something larger than myself. And when I keep that in mind, I the ego doesn't expand, out of control. It's not me doing things or me being here. It's me doing it with somebody else, me co creating, me working with others, me working within a system. And I think
Yeah.
that helps a whole lot.
Right. Yeah. It's beautiful. And, you know, Eileen, we've covered a lot of ground already. This idea, I called it the lost art of selfhood. I don't really think it's lost at all, but maybe it is forgotten. Maybe it is something that all of us just need to remember. But I'm going to be closing out here in a couple of minutes, and I want to give you an opportunity to share any final thoughts that you have that you'd like people to know before we go.
Well, I want to tell people a little bit about what I'm doing because I'm looking for help and participants. For 50 years, more than 50 years, I've been working with emotions, and I have discovered an entire system or identified an entire system for emotions, some of which I've already talked about here on the program. And now I'm writing books and creating courses, and with an eye to creating a center or a way of teaching people how to work with emotions so that we realign with emotions, so that we use emotions the way they're designed to be used, which is messengers to help us live better lives. And so I want to encourage people, if you're interested, especially if you work with emotions already, but you're not totally satisfied with the way you work with them, you're not finding quite the information that you need or think you need in order to work with them, that you make contact with me. And I put my Eileen at emotionalmasteryforlife.com email in the chat here. Make contact with me and see what we might be able to do. You may be part of my first class on this or our first coaching group, um, or and subsequent ones. But I'm dedicated now to bringing what I have called emotional mastery for years to the world. And it's a way of achieving or moving into the things that we've been talking about. And especially since we're going through change and we're going to uh, a better level of relating and connecting with our spiritual self, I think the fastest way to do that is working with emotions, because they are energy and they take us there very quickly. So I just want to invite you to start looking at your relationship with emotions. And if you're ready to work on it or look at it differently, contact me.
Beautiful. Thank you, Eileen. And thank you all for being here. Thank you for watching this program. Thank you for being a part of my community. I hope that you have found some value in this presentation, and I hope that you will check out my website at MagnifEssence.com. Meanwhile, before we close out, I want to just give you a reminder of my 3-part life mastery mantra that I share pretty much at the end of every show. It goes like this. It's easy to remember, something that you can do every day. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So thank you again for being here. I wish you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey, and I'll see you next time on MagnifEssence in Motion. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you, David. Bye.